and welcome to the July 2015 edition of the Sustainable Materials Management Web Academy. We are happy to have you participating. This 90-minute webinar is hosted by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency to provide training and networking opportunities to state and local governments, non-governmental organizations, and other stakeholders interested in sustainable materials management. As George mentioned, today's topic is Let's Wrap. WRAP Recycling Action Program, Best Practices to Boost Plastic Film Recycling in Your Community. We're all aware of the challenges when it comes to recycling plastic bags and plastic film, which includes dry cleaning bags, bread bags, plastic film packaging around paper goods, drink bottles, and other plastic films. There's a growing national movement to boost plastic film recycling by helping communities better educate the public on appropriate ways to recycle this material. It's called the WRAP Recycling Action Program, or WRAP. Through this webinar, you'll learn how WRAP can help you meet your sustainability goals by improving residential recycling of plastic film packaging with an emphasis on harmonizing approaches and outreach materials. Today's focus will be on the work done in the state of Wisconsin. This webinar will walk you through best practice approaches and leave you with practical information for enhancing film recycling education in your community. It's my pleasure to introduce our two featured speakers, Sherry Jackson, Director of Film Recycling, Plastics Division of the American Chemistry Council, and Becky Curtis, Recycling Assistant, City of Milwaukee, Department of Public Works. Sherry oversees the development and implementation and promotion of national and local programs designed to spur strong growth in the recycling of all flexible polyethylene film packaging. As the Director of ACC's Flexible Film Recycling Group, she leads programs and partnerships with key stakeholders that increase public awareness on how, where, and the importance of recycling film packaging, while facilitating broader engagement. Sherry is joined by Becky Curtis. Becky is with the City of Milwaukee's Department of Public Works, working in the areas of waste reduction and recycling. Becky enforces Milwaukee's recycling ordinances, provides recycling implementation guidance to property owners, assists with project and campaign development, as well as maintains outreach partnerships with community groups and local organizations within the city. So, moving on to today's webinar. First, our disclaimer, and now to the webinar. Today we have a joint presentation. After each speaker, we will pause and answer one or two burning questions, so please type your questions into the question box. We'll also have time at the end of the presentations for additional questions, so please feel free to type your questions throughout the presentation. Thank you again for participating, and let's get started. I welcome Sherry and Becky, and will now turn the presentation over to you both.
Thanks, Christine. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to present here today. As solid waste managers and recycling professionals, many of you are aware of the challenges when it comes to educating your community on what and how to recycle plastic bags and film packaging. Well, I'm excited to discuss with you today a national education initiative that's reinvigorated plastic film recycling and how you can become a part of it. So let's wrap. We see the problems explained in media clips from municipalities all over the country. Plastic film mixing and curbside recycling causing things like equipment failure, lost time, and other problems. Today we'll show you how to fix it. WRAP is a free program designed to support your sustainability efforts. We have no-cost resources available, and it's easy to implement and sustain. Here are some of the benefits for state and local governments from joining WRAP. You can increase waste diversion from your landfills, prevent unwanted film from entering the MRF, and numerous other benefits as listed here. Now you may be asking, why are we doing this? The Flexible Film Recycling Group is a self-funded group of the ACC's Plastics Division, which has extensive experiences, resources, and connections with sustainability groups to increase the recycling of plastics. Our goal is to double PE film recycling by 2020, and our mission is to establish best practices and engage stakeholders to implement them. What we do is to promote the importance of film recycling, remove barriers to film recovery, and unlock greater opportunities for film recycling. WRAP is our hallmark initiative. We are proud to have as our newest member Procter & Gamble, These are the other members of the FFRG, which are industry leaders and very much committed to increase PE film recycling. So to reground us, by the end of this presentation, we want you to walk away with an understanding of the importance of film recycling, the challenges and opportunities, RAP community best practices, and how you can get involved. So why recycle film? Plastics packaging use is growing because of the numerous sustainability benefits as listed here. However, film packaging has some significant environmental benefits as well. According to a recent study, PE film, like other plastics packaging, helps to significantly reduce energy use and greenhouse gas emissions compared to alternative materials. Film recycling is also making positive gains. In 2013, we saw a dramatic increase of 116 pounds of PE film recycled. This is an 11% increase over the previous year. It represents a 74% increase in 10 years. And as we know, much of this material is ending up where we don't want it. Plastics film doesn't have to be a burden to your recycling efforts. Over 70% of the U.S. population has access to bag and film recycling, mostly at retail locations. There are 18,000 such locations across the country. It's easy to divert bag and film to retail collection, where it is already being recycled. A few words about why the collection infrastructure matters in film recovery. Retail collection of bag and film is important because it maintains the quality of the material for the end-use markets. Conversely, curbside film tends to be contaminated, and it poses some challenges. There's a strong market demand for clean and dry film. As you can see here from this historical pricing chart, mixed film is 3 to 5 times more valuable than alternative cardboard packaging. While film recycling is making good progress, we can and we must do better. PE film needs effective end-of-life options. It's used in every business, in every household, and recycling presents us with a huge opportunity. Right now, there are billions of pounds of material yet to be captured through recycling. And there's tremendous momentum driving increased recovery. Many of you are likely to be aware of SPC's How to Recycle film label. The How to Recycle label was initiated by Green Blue's Sustainable Packaging Coalition. It aims to reduce recycling confusion by creating a clear, well-understood, and harmonized label that enables industry to convey to consumers how to recycle packaging after its use. This label is being adopted by more and more major brands and retailers, as seen here. FFRG has partnered over the past few years with SPC to further promote adoption of this label as a key component of our RAP Public Outreach Initiative. As the label adoption increases, we'll need municipalities to really do their part to direct residents to drop-off locations. Here's how you can make a difference. Some compelling information for you. According to a survey of Wisconsin residents, 82% of the public didn't know that plastic wraps can be recycled. 54% didn't know that plastic bags and film generally should not be recycled curbside. The RAP Recycling Action Program is a national multi-stakeholder public education and outreach initiative. Here's how RAP works. First, we seek to engage key stakeholders in public-private partnerships. We work with our partners to implement the most effective film recycling programs by providing them educational tools and technical assistance to engage more consumers in film recycling. Currently, we're enlisting key partners such as retailers, recyclers, brands, state and local governments, using their unique capabilities and roles to promote broader film recycling. For example, our retail partners provide the necessary infrastructure and consumer reach. Our recyclers provide needed guidance to brands and converters on recycling film packaging, and state and local governments have the bandwidth for effective community outreach. WRAP puts businesses, local governments, and volunteers in contact with the information they need to facilitate waste reduction efforts and model sustainable practices of their own. Here are some examples of WRAP tools that you can use in your community outreach and education on film recycling. One of the most effective outreach vehicles for communicating to consumers about film recycling is through our public-private partnerships involving key stakeholders in consumer awareness campaigns. Listed here are WRAP stakeholders and how we seek to engage them in film recycling programs. Here are our outreach targets and how we communicate to them. FFRG works with partners to develop effective messages about what and how to recycle film packaging. These messages are shared with them through signage, websites, campaign collateral, and our allies networks. Now a bit about Wisconsin WRAP. The State Department of Natural Resources conducted a waste characterization study a while back that revealed millions of dollars worth of plastics being landfilled. So in 2013, the DNR partnered with ACC's Flexible Film Recycling Group and Green Blues SPC on an initiative called Wisconsin WRAP to encourage the recycling of plastic film packaging beyond carryout bags. Through this partnership, we implemented a series of pilots to develop best practices for increasing the recycling of both post-consumer and commercial film in Wisconsin that could be replicated nationwide. DNR has been an outstanding partner in supporting this effort, which has greatly benefited plastic film recovery. At this time, I'd like to turn the discussion over to Becky Curtis, who is representing the City of Milwaukee and the State Council on Recycling, to share with you her experiences as a WRAP partner and to also provide an overview of Wisconsin WRAP.
Thank you, Sherry. I'm going to jump right in here. It's Chris before Becky starts because we have a handful of questions I think would be worthwhile answering at this point in time. The first one is a very basic question. Some folks just want to wrap their I didn't mean to say wrap. They wanted to wrap their head around what film packaging is. So would you highlight that a little bit more clearly? Sure.
Film packaging is the soft, thin, flexible packaging that's used for a number of products used in the household, such as bread bags and carry-out bags, dry cleaning bags, produce bags, overwrap around a lot of products such as bathroom tissue and napkins and bulk products, and case wraps around beverages and the like.
And I have one specific question that you didn't mention. How about frozen vegetable bags?
They are, the qualification for recyclable film is that it's pure polyethylene or as close as possible to pure polyethylene. And vegetable bags, if you're meaning the produce type that are used for fresh vegetables, that is recyclable. The other are multi-laminate, multi-layer type materials that are not compatible with the PE film recycling stream.
Great, thank you so much. And then one more question that will go to this point in time is just what is the current plastic film recycling rate? Give or take.
It's around 12%.
Great. All right.
And it's over 1 billion pounds total.
Wow. That's a lot of plastic bags.
It is, and as I said, we're looking to double that to 2 billion pounds by 2020. So we have a pretty aggressive goal.
Great. Thank you so much, Sherry. And Becky, please take over.
Thank you. Thank you. We're happy that Milwaukee was chosen as a focal point for our WRAP campaign efforts in order to increase public awareness and engagement in plastic bag and film recycling. We're happy to be a part of this program for many reasons. We utilize the WRAP platform to help encourage increased diversion. Here in the city of Milwaukee, we have a goal of reaching 40% diversion by 2020. WRAP also helps us to encourage the utilization of store film collection programs where the material will be kept in a source-separated, clean and dry stream, which is crucial for recovering the highest value from recycling this material. Also, here in Milwaukee, plastic bags and films pose various problems at our materials recovery facility, so it's important for our localized outreach to emphasize a do not recycle curbside message. Next slide, please, Sherry. So I'm going to provide just a little more background information about some events leading up to the development of the WRAP effort, but I really want to get to the heart of our Milwaukee campaign efforts, so I'm going to flip through the next couple slides quickly. As Sherry mentioned, in 2009, the DNR carried out a waste composition study and found that various types of plastics make up 14% of the waste stream being sent to Wisconsin landfills. That year, landfill plastics was valued at $64 million. And in 2012, the DNR conducted a plastics recycling study and took a look at how best to increase recovery of these different types of plastic materials. In response to that, the Wisconsin Council on Recycling convened several multi-stakeholder work groups, each focusing on strategies to recover different types of plastic. So the Council on Recycling Film and Bag Work Group came up with similar goals and action items to what the American Chemistry Council's Flexible Film Recycling Group was aiming for, and so the two work groups merged to carry out the WRAP efforts. And as you can see, the common goals there on the slide. Next slide, please. So again, the DNR has provided great support for plastic film recycling in Wisconsin. They've provided staffing support for the Wisconsin Council on Recycling. They've provided and distributed Wisconsin-specific how-to resources. They've helped to coordinate local activity, such as the Milwaukee campaign and the efforts in other communities. And as an excellent film recycling advocate, the DNR has issued press releases, engaged their staff, sponsored webinars, helped to develop radio ads, and also included WRAP information in updates to local governments and in their email newsletters. Next slide, please. Throughout all outreach efforts, there was a common message that there is a role in this for everyone: households, community recycling programs, and businesses. DNR emphasized the important role that local governments play in film recycling education and urged them to become WRAP champions and utilize the tools made available through this program. Next slide. Now I'll get into Milwaukee's WRAP campaign. Again, we're always eager to encourage residents to utilize store collection programs for plastic bag and film in order to get that material into a source-separated stream so that it can be recycled at its highest value. And also here in Milwaukee, we emphasize the do not recycle curbside message. In 2013, we launched our first collaborative effort with the state's major grocery retailer, Roundy's. We experienced some logistical challenges, which we worked to overcome. And following the guidance of Roundy's corporate, we undertook a more targeted campaign and were able to fine-tune our messaging and approaches. For the 2015 campaign, we reached out to 10 Roundy's stores, which we prioritized based on store layout, which was having one main entrance versus two different entrances not inside of each other, an absence of previous bag and film promotional efforts, and their geographic location. So we selected some stores within the city of Milwaukee and in suburban communities to participate. Our key messages were that here in Milwaukee, plastic bags and wraps do not go in curbside bins. They can be returned for recycling to major grocery and retail stores such as Roundy's. In addition to plastic grocery bags, consumers can recycle clean and dry newspaper bags, produce bags, bread bags, zip-top bags, and all the other materials that are accepted in the program. It's not just plastic grocery bags. Also, we wanted to let people know what happens to these materials. Plastic bags and wraps get recycled into products such as new grocery bags, benches, and decking. For our campaign metrics, we collected baseline data for a couple of months from our participating stores to determine the type of film they were currently receiving. Following the baseline data, we launched a 6 to 8 week campaign, and we measured whether or not there was an increase We aimed to measure whether or not there was an increase in the number of different types of film recovered, the volume of film recovered, and whether or not adding other film to the mix would lead to contamination of the stream, which is a key concern of retailers wanting to get involved. Next slide. We really appreciate the industry support in helping to increase the sustainability of plastic packaging and the resources that have been made available through the WRAP program. So this is what the Milwaukee campaign looked like. You can see the new receptacle there and an image of bag stuffers that we used and we distributed to our stores. So we aimed for easily replicable campaign activities. We wanted to promote increased awareness and participation in plastic film recycling programs amongst the customers of these participating stores. So once our campaign started, each store was provided with one of these new recycling receptacles for plastic bags and film. You can see the round one with the black top. The receptacles were already outfitted with campaign signage and the posters that indicated the different types of materials accepted. And you can also see that there is a do not place these materials curbside message. And in the middle and the right-hand side, you can see an image of the bag stuffers that we provided to stores. So we consulted with store directors for some additional ideas for promotional events. And we found that bag stuffers was a popular and common way for the stores to communicate with its customers. This is something they did all the time. Execution was easy and smooth, and so it was a good way for us to get this message across. We distributed roughly 4,000 educational bag stuffers to each of our 10 stores, and they incorporated into their normal distribution. We also had one of our stuffers was an English-Spanish bilingual version. Again, you can see the do not place curbside message on the back of the bag stuffer. So again, we're happy that we have the industry support here in making plastic bag and other packaging more sustainable, and that the tools that have been provided through the WRAP campaign are extremely useful. Next slide. So what did we learn? From our initial results, we did gain some insights on some more effective approaches for getting people involved that will be useful in other campaigns moving forward. We learned that there is an increased awareness. People knew more about which film materials are accepted beyond carry-out bags and the plastic grocery bags, and that film should not be recycled in curbside in the Milwaukee area. Some important highlights. It's important to have local government and haulers do outreach to residents. More important than store outreach, as a local government, we have various communication channels and challenges too, but we have various communication channels and local credibility. It's important to make sure that the messaging agrees with what our local collection programs are trying to accomplish and with what the MRF guidelines are. When the community hears from us, it makes a difference in their behavior. Some interview participants mentioned some news stories that we had done about plastic bag and the issue of plastic bags. No curbside, return to retail messaging is important. For Milwaukee, it was important to emphasize this and to also be thoughtful about the way that we crafted this message so that we convey it in a clear and concise manner. It's very tricky. We don't want to confuse people and end up promoting exactly the behavior that we are trying to avoid. You saw in the previous slide, we had an image of the person putting something in a recycling bin and the no circle around it, and the message, please do not place these materials, plastic bag and film materials, curbside. So we needed to be very careful not to make it an anti-recycling message just on its own. Also, we learned that more impressions are better. You can introduce new signage or other visual cues into the surroundings, but customers still may not notice, especially in store environments where there are already a lot of messages vying for customer attention. More impressions need to be made in order to break through. During some of our customer surveys, we asked when we asked those people who weren't aware of the recycling program what might help them to learn about it, half of them said that they would be influenced by a sign or a poster or an imprint on a bag. And of course, these were all things that had been implemented. Moving forward, more impressions in more places would be helpful. So changing behavior is not an easy task. Awareness, knowledge, and behavior are not things that people acquire in the same way. People may form habits without knowing why, or they may have knowledge about a desired behavior without actually adopting it. It takes different strategies to change knowledge than it does to affect actual behavior changes. A couple of things that could help for future efforts. Demonstrating the practice enhances engagement, so make the desired behavior more visible. A great campaign activity would be to hold a Caught in the Act promotion. Let people know where you'll be, what store you'll be at, and that you'll be rewarding proper plastic bag and film recycling. Really promote it before and after so other people can see what is happening. And also once customers see other customers performing the act of recycling plastic bag and film, they're more likely to do it themselves. Also, to reframe the message that this practice is normal. Bag recycling is already the norm for a lot of people. We want to emphasize to people that what we're asking is not much more effort than what they're already doing. The key is to emphasize that people would be amplifying something they're already doing or complementing a behavior that they're already carrying out with just a little something extra. And that little something can have a big impact. For example, recycling not just your plastic grocery bags, but the other types of plastic film that are accepted. Trying to convey the impression that people are the exception if they are not doing it is also a good strategy. Often people learn behavior by practicing it or seeing others practice it. So an exaggerated statement could be that millions of Americans are already bringing plastic grocery bags back to the store for recycling. Did you know you can also bring these other items as well, and then list the others. Also, be patient. It may take a while to see results. Once people have the knowledge and the awareness and even the motivation to do this, it may take a while for them to save up their materials and remember to bring them to the store. But the gears are turning and the effort is moving. So that's Milwaukee's story. I'd be happy to answer questions later on, but I'll turn it back to Sherry for now.
Great. This is Chris jumping in again. Sorry, Sherry. So thank you. I have a couple questions I wanted to just clarify again before we move forward. I think there seems to be a lot of conversation in the audience, questions about exactly what, again, constitutes wrap, collected materials. So I just wanted to bring a couple up and get the thumbs up, thumbs down. One was bubble wrap.
Yes.
Bubble wrap is a go, okay.
Yes.
Pallet wrap too, which I believe is also a go, Sherry.
Absolutely, yeah.
Ziploc bags.
Yep.
This one might be throw a little wrench in the works. Salt bags.
Actually, clean and dry, yes.
Oh, okay.
They are it's polyethylene film. So if it's clean and it's dried, it is acceptable, and that's in the PE film recycling strip.
Okay. I think at the end we'll get into questions about labeling and such like that. Becky, a few questions just related to the Milwaukee program. Did Milwaukee ever collect this material curbside prior to the campaign?
No.
Okay. That sounds great. And what else did I have here? I think we'll save the rest for the end of the presentation. So Sherry, back to you.
Thanks, Chris. A few more things. For information for folks who are not clear on what polyethylene film is and what packaging is recyclable, they can go to our website, plasticfilmrecycling.org, that has all of that information. And also, Chris, I wanted to update some information I provided to you about the recycling rate. We just checked the recent EPA report, and that rate for bag and film is 17%.
Great. I should have known that myself, 17%. Thank you.
Well, now you do.
Hey, that was the webinar last month.
Okay. Well, to continue with our discussion here, I wanted to go into a few other good examples of local efforts to increase the recycling of plastic film packaging. In Outagamie County, Wisconsin, we are supporting a joint educational pilot to test some effective tools and methods for diverting plastic film from the MRFs and increasing retail drop-offs. And an initial MRF audit from that pilot revealed that most film entered that MRF through bagged recyclables. So we're having we're planning a consumer awareness component with that as well, and that's expected to kick off shortly. These are some of the unique tools we plan to use for that pilot. We have cart tags conveying in this area that no bags to, as I said, it showed that the film was entering through bagged, recyclables were entering through bagged plastic film. So the message is don't bag your recyclables. And on the reverse side of the cart tag, it's a designated community that we're using to put those tags on is a copy of the film recycling poster. This is our newest version of that poster that was just recently updated that retailers use to help communicate to their customers and consumers about what film is recyclable in that stream. So there you'll see a lot of the images that folks were asking about regarding whether or not the material is recyclable. Another key WRAP partner is Dunn County, Wisconsin. Dunn County has implemented a number of tools and approaches to increase the recycling of both post-consumer and commercial film. And this includes, they had retail drop-off stations. They conducted consistent outreach to their residents through newsletters and mailers about film recycling. They, of course, used our WRAP communication tools, and they undertook some paid advertising. But another effective approach they used is they engaged a nonprofit rehabilitation center for individuals with disabilities as a consolidation point for bailing film prior to it being transferred to a recycler. And consolidation is one of the key factors that needs to be worked through in order to have an effective film recycling program. These combined efforts resulted in the collection of between 500 and 800 pounds of film each month, and this is expected to increase as their program matures. Dunn County also obtained a local grant for paid advertising. Their advertising campaign was Previous Life. This concept was to show what recycled film packaging was prior to it becoming recycled into products such as decking and bags and sheet and pipe and other in-use products. So they took a little different twist on it, and they wanted it to be catchy and edgy, and I think they had some good results because they're starting to pique the interest and get more people interested in film recycling. Our latest WRAP partnership is in Vancouver County, Washington. There we're leveraging their Recycling Done Right campaign to better educate their customers and businesses about film recycling. Phase 1 of their campaign has been completed. It was an educational outreach effort not to put film and glass into the curbside bins and encouraging film to be returned to retail drop-offs. They used the mailer, which you see at the left here, and that was sent to some 20,000 households. They also produced a video, an educational video on film recycling, and provided prize incentives for folks to view that video. Phase 2 of this effort will involve our WRAP campaign, and that is slated to begin in August and run through September. The goal of that campaign, similar to the Outagamie campaign, is to keep film out of the MRFs and to increase retail drop-offs. And we're looking to use the best practices from that to further expand the program, not only in the Vancouver-Clark County area, but broader and in other localities that have an interest in these types of programs. So now for an update on our overall WRAP efforts. WRAP is starting to gain some momentum. We're engaging some important stakeholders, as you can see here. We have 4 retail partners, 1 state partner. We have 29 local government community recycling champions, if you will, and 2 MRFs. A little distinction about the partners versus champions is that our partners tend to engage in pilot programs where we have metrics and best practices as a result, and our champions are primarily responsible for sharing information and resources about film recycling. So now we're calling on you to join this important effort by becoming WRAP champions. here's something you can do right away. You can pull out your phones, or as soon as this webinar is concluded, you can jump on your Facebook pages and send out this clear, simple message. Take plastic bags and other film wraps back to store drop-off bins. And then you can direct people to plasticfilmrecycling.org, where they can use the zip code locator to find locations for stores to take back their film. And as many of you also use Facebook pages for your municipalities, we're encouraging you to send out messages on film recycling and what you do to promote film recycling every 2 weeks or more. You know, if that's a part of your routine. If you communicate more frequently, we're asking that you make communications on film recycling part of your regular social media outreach. But going even further than that, here's how you can become a WRAP champion. You can sign up in ReTrack Connect, and you can select among the options listed here, sharing the WRAP tools in your community, adding retail locations to the plasticfilmrecycling.org drop-off directory, encouraging your peers to post the signage, and also encouraging them to join WRAP. So for many of you who are ReTrack users, you can just simply go into ReTrack and select the WRAP page and follow the simple instructions for registering. For new users, we'll be providing some special instructions for registering following this webinar. So we have something special for you who sign up before July 30th. We have a starter toolkit that will help you in your community outreach of resources that you can use to help educate your community on film recycling. There's a downloadable digital badge that you can put on your website. There are guidance documents for how to set up film recycling programs, tip sheets, retail posters, and a host of other collateral that we have found to be very useful, some of which you saw in this presentation, in educating about film recycling. And one of the other things I wanted to mention is that the FFRG, when we consider supporting communities with public awareness campaigns, we often look in ReTrack to identify those communities that have signed up as WRAP champions. So we hope that will be a further incentive for you to sign up as soon as possible to become champions. So I want to leave you with a few thoughts. Together, we can double film recycling to 2 billion pounds. As we stated, film packaging needs effective end-of-life options, and WRAP can grow the recycling and divert plastic film from MRFs. But the success for that really depends on state and municipal governments becoming more actively engaged and involved. This is a map on our website that shows the growth in the movement of WRAP. And it's exciting as we're beginning to see some progress here. Consumers, they have the material, they have the interest. Local government and volunteers are starting to spread the word. Each of these play a critical role in building momentum and growth in plastics film recycling. So in closing, I want to say to you, we've heard your concerns regarding plastic film in your curbside recycling stream. We've created tools and we are developing best practices to respond to your needs. We ask that you help take WRAP to the next level by becoming WRAP champions and/or partners. At this point, I'd like to thank you, and I encourage you to please let us know if there's something further we can do to help support and enhance your recycling efforts.
Great, thank you, Sherry. We have a lot of questions in a couple of different categories, so I'm going to back up again and get back to what you can recycling in the WRAP program. It's amazing, I keep getting more and more questions, so we'll start with that. Sherry, thumbs up, thumbs down, cereal bags.
The liner, yes.
Yes.
Polyethylene, yeah.
Okay. Saran wrap?
No.
No. And that would also include this kind of cellophane saran wrap around like a meat container or a meat product?
No.
Okay. No. All right. I think I have covered every possibility that folks asked, but if you have something else, please type it in. To get back to the actual...
Christine, just before you go on, also what will help folks in understanding what film packaging is recyclable and not recyclable, they should start to look on the packaging for the How to Recycle Film label. More and more brand companies, as I said, are applying that label to the packaging. It's not completely comprehensive, and we're looking to really expand the use of that label, but that will be really informative for folks to know which material is compatible for that recycling stream.
Well, you know what? You stole my thunder, because that was my next host of questions, was on labeling. So that was one. And then I have another question about how to recycle labels. Are you involved with that organization at all?
Yes, we are. We work in very close partnership with SPC in promoting the adoption of that label. We think it really has a lot of potential in educating consumers about recycling film and a whole host and a variety of film products beyond carry-out bags. So we work very closely with them to, further expand the adoption of that label in as many film products that are compatible with the recycling stream as possible. And here we're talking again polyethylene film.
Great. I have another question about working with Recycle Across America.
I'm not familiar with that.
Okay. I have a contact information I will share with you after the webinar.
That'd be great.
So we'll skip ahead now to kind of a question that maybe predates the RAP program or is a precursor to the RAP program. Do you work at all in the communities with source reduction or reusable bags? Kristen, that might, Becky, that also might be applicable to what Milwaukee did.
Do we work in communities?
With the source reduction message.
Well, our source reduction message is that the packaging that we use, polyethylene film, has huge source reduction benefits. There's less material needed for packaging as a result of the film packaging and what's needed to produce that packaging. So the packaging itself is a huge source reduction opportunity.
And here in the city of Milwaukee, then we always promote the message of waste reduction being our first priority and reducing waste in the first place. So we always encourage people to, for example, use your reusable bags and cut down on plastic bag waste. We've attended some screenings of some plastic bag related films and movies and communities who are getting together to talk about that, and we encourage people to try to be smart about that. Use your reusable bag, shop smart, but when you do end up with a certain amount of plastic bag film items that you can't recycle curbside, most people are not going to take their own bags to the store to pick up bread, so you end up with bread bags, sometimes produce bags, all those other things. So RAP is a great way to encourage recycling of those items. But yes, we do always emphasize a waste reduction as a first priority message.
Great.
And one of the things I'd like to encourage too when people take their reusable bags is take a bag of their bagged film products back to put in the recycling bins at the front of the store.
Yes. I actually think I could spend all day asking about other types of bags, so I think I'm going to punt on the rest of the ones that we have here and refer folks back to plasticfilmrecycling.org. We also got a couple of questions about a locator, which I also believe can be found at that website, Sherry?
Yes. It's for our drop-off directory. And you just click on that and put in your zip code, and it can tell you where you can find the nearest store to deposit your bag and film for recycling.
Great. I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about what happens once the bags are in the bin, who are they collected by, and are the markets national such that this program isn't going to change what is collected from one state to another?
These are national markets. Currently, Trex is the largest market for the material. They're composite lumber decking company. But what happens when the film goes to the stores? Many of the products that come into the stores are wrapped in polyethylene film. They're shipped there, they're packaged in that. That film is collected back of the store. The material at the front of the store, a lot of stores provide that as a customer service. They mix that with the back of the house film, and then it is baled and usually sent to a distribution center where it is picked up by the reclaimer and sent to the in-market facility for recycling.
Great. I do have a couple of questions about what I call the recycling police. I won't mention who was targeted out on the retailer side, but it's the old question, people collect it, but then it gets thrown in the trash anyway.
Sherry, I'm on the line too. Do you want me to answer?
Oh, yeah. Nina Butler is our, with More Recycling Associates, they're our chief consultant on the film recycling markets and implementation of film recycling. And so they know a lot about the film markets and what happens and how this material is recovered. So I'd like Nina to respond to that question.
Yeah, to clarify, so the material is usually bagged and then sent back in Gaylords by truck when the trucks return to the distribution center where they're baled. And so sometimes the bags are thrown in something that may look like in a container that's heading for trash and not necessarily baled. But we encourage people to contact us through plasticfilmrecycling.org if you find that to be the case, because when we reach out to the major retailers to ask about this, they then go back to the stores and say, this is a revenue stream for us, please don't do that. It's usually in error. That is, that's not the common practice, and so we do encourage folks to let us know if that's observed. The other thing I wanted to point out, just to be really sensitive to the retailers that are providing this service, is that for the salt bags, clean and dry is the case for everything, but to not do it in huge volumes without checking with the managers first. That's really critical. Sometimes they'll say bring it around to the back as opposed to stuffing it in the front of the store.
Thank you, Nina. So let's get a little bit more into the actual RAP program itself and how one joins in. We talked a lot about municipalities, Sherry. Is there an opportunity for any college and university participation, or how does that sector tie in?
Absolutely. Nina, you can talk to the experience about how we involve the college and universities in Wisconsin.
Sure. So we've worked on getting some colleges and universities on board, and generally the challenge with universities is that they need, there's not always enough volume on site to be able to direct market. It usually requires working with third parties. So in cases in Wisconsin, they're consolidating through these vocational centers, the community rehabilitation centers. There are universities across the country that are participating, and they're tracking that through Recyclemania is one way that we're trying to look at who's doing it and where the opportunities and challenges are. So if anyone is interested in that, definitely reach out to us. We, through the FFRG, we do provide the technical assistance and setting up new programs, and encourage folks to get involved through ReTrack and through Recyclemania.
Great. So Nina, I will also ask you a similar question for the rural community. And for those of you on the webinar, at the end of the webinar, we have an evaluation where we'll ask you if you would like the RAP folks to be in touch with you directly. So please hang on to that evaluation and let us know that way if I don't get to your questions through the webinar. So Nina, rural communities, would that be a similar model?
Yeah, and Dunn County is a really good example. I encourage you to, we can connect you and for questions around Dunn County. They only had, when we started, a couple of retail drop-off locations, and generally I discourage folks from adding film and bag to the drop-off at a depot or recycling center unless it's coupled with commercial recycling, because the volume is going to be very low. It's best to go back through retail for the greatest efficiency for the community. But in Dunn County, they were really committed to doing this, and they have 7 drop-off locations throughout the county. And so what they did is they consolidated these through kind of the smaller hand balers and then delivered to the vocational center, which is then baled. And they also received material at that center from a local hospital, a university, and some other businesses that don't generate enough to do the direct marketing. So that's a really important model for the rural, is kind of coupling this with a service provider like a vocational center where you get that mutual benefit, creating jobs, creating revenue for that stream, but also providing that service where there's not enough volume to necessarily warrant that specific handling in the rural environment.
Great. I have a question that kind of gets, I think, to what you were just talking about, too. Do you have any insight on the quality difference between bag and films collected in a source-separated program, like a retail drop-off, versus, this says single-stream curbside programs, which we haven't really touched on, but sorted out in MRF?
Sure. Yeah, historical pricing for film collected through retail can be up around 15 cents per pound, versus at the MRF it can be 0 to, at the highest, like 3 to 5, but that's pretty extremely rare. So it's a pretty big difference in terms of the actual value of the material, and then the difference in the cost for a retailer to process versus the cost for MRF that's quite a big delta as well. So there's a huge difference. And then in terms of the actual quality, the price reflects that, but from a pellet to pellet, there is definitely more consistent quality with the retail mix.
Absolutely.
What you end up with the MRF material is often more of the other materials like polypropylene and ash content.
And I know, at least in New England, that the MRFs are not really designed to collect plastic bags individually. Right. They're more of a contaminant that feeds the materials recycling facility. Okay, so now let's get a little bit more to wrap. You had shown your partners, Sherry, in the WRAP program, and I had a couple of questions. Are the big waste management folks a partner? Is Walmart a partner?
Great questions. We've reached out to both of those entities. They're definitely interested. They're definitely interested in opportunities to further engage with us. We're at the exploratory stage right now, it's best to say, but there's some opportunities there that we have discussed with them, and hopefully we'll be able to secure those partnerships. But there's definitely an interest in terms of both.
Great, thank you so much. The municipalities, I have quite a few questions on, is there a financial responsibility of the municipalities? How does that work back and forth?
In terms of,
is there a financial to join?
To be a WRAP partner champion?
Yes.
Yes. No. And this is a perfect example with Vancouver. The state has a lot of in-kind support that they can provide for this effort, and localities as well. So we look to them in terms of their networks, their connections, the partners they can get involved in the efforts, in sharing the resources, and supporting campaigns so that we can achieve the types of best practices that we can look to spread to other areas of the country. So there's not a direct cost for them to be partners of our efforts.
I think you meant Wisconsin. I think you said Vancouver. Did you mean Wisconsin?
Well, Wisconsin, of course, is our ultimate pilot, but I wanted to focus on a specific locality where we are partners, and they're not costs associated with that partnership.
Great. I have a couple of questions about the revenue stream and how that works. Is there a cost share with the retailers? How is that a benefit to the retailer to provide a collection opportunity to the public?
Yes, there are cost benefits to the retailers. By recycling the film as opposed to disposing of the film, their waste disposal costs are reduced. In addition, there is revenue from that material. They are paid for the material that is recycled, so it is a source of revenue for them as well.
It's important to note that most film that's generated comes from the commercial sector. So the material that's unwrapped in the back of the store is already traveling back to the distribution center, and that's where a big portion of the revenue kind of starts. And then the addition of the material that the consumer brings back adds to that. So it's kind of piggybacking on the existing reverse logistics.
That makes a lot of sense. Great. So can you talk about a minimum volume for collection? Kind of gets back to the rural conversation.
Mm-hmm. Well, in general, in order to site a larger baler, you need to be able to generate at least a truckload per year, and that is a lot of material. And that's why, in general, I try to encourage folks to piggyback either in a rural environment, or the biggest challenge is really that there's a lot, every business generates film, but not enough to really make it worthwhile. So where we can develop these consolidation points is really key. And some of the examples, Sherry mentioned the Community Rehabilitation Center. Another one is, and there's a good example, we started long ago in Orange County, Chapel Hill, North Carolina, is piggybacking where small businesses within a shopping center will return to an anchor store. Another is distributors that maybe drop off material, say at a dry cleaner, they backhaul. Another is fiber collectors that when they pick up cardboard can pick up bagged film. So those are examples of using existing networks to serve those kind of smaller generators. It's just instead of having a specific, trying to save up for years to get a whole truckload, or shipping small volumes, which is very inefficient. It's really piggybacking on those other networks.
Great. And actually, Nina had specific questions about shopping malls and dry cleaners and how they are engaged in the program. And Becky, specific to you, were those folks engaged in Milwaukee?
Here in Milwaukee, we're partnering with Roundy's, the grocery retail store. So we chose 10 stores, 10 Roundy's stores within city limits and in surrounding areas.
Okay, so you really focused on just that one brand and that one
retail.
Yeah,
for our campaign, yep.
Gotcha. I misunderstood that myself, so thank you. Sherry, I get a lot of questions about the collection and recycling being environmentally positive with transit. Can you talk about retail stores being a strong collection point for the residential material because of the backhauling option? So I think we talked about that, Nina, but anything further to add?
Yeah, I think it's a really different animal from the other materials that you think about in the residential stream. Because film is so heavily focused on where the bulk of it is commercial, it's the most efficient to try to couple that collection and transport with where the most of the material is being generated. So it's hard to kind of shift gears from most of us thinking of bottles and cans in our curbside bin to thinking about where the volume is in commercial and trying to piggyback on that. So because these trucks are already in many cases going back empty, whether it's to a dry cleaner or from a major retailer, using that space is ultimately the best case. And I mentioned cardboard. Where you find cardboard or OCC, you always find film. And those two materials, often if you can bag the material and keep them separate, combining them but then separating when you get back to the consolidation point is really an efficient way to handle both materials.
Great. Are you working with any local governments outside of the United States, or is the local government eligible to join RAP outside the country?
Canada, we have.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, we have some partnership in Canada working with the Canadian Plastic Industry Association, and RETRAC is set up where we do encourage folks in Canada as well.
As I'm rereading the question, it just said outside of the United States. For some reason, I put Canada in, so we'll see from there. The materials that you have in the RAP program, again, there's no financial commitment to access those. Are they accessible to folks who don't formally join the RAP program?
Yes. They're downloadable. They can download most of those materials from their website, from our website.
Great. Thank you so much. We have a couple of questions about how does RAP make money?
How does RAP make money?
How is RAP funded?
Make money? Funded? It's funded by the efforts and the activities of RAP are funded by the FFRG.
And the FFRG is?
The Flexible Film Recycling Group. Our members of the ACC Flexible Film Recycling Group are the funders of RAP. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. So I have a question specific to New England. Here in Connecticut, the recycling hauler has told us that the market for plastic wrap is terrible. and they're not sure how much longer the material will be collected in Connecticut. Can you talk about this?
Do you want me to?
Yes, Nina.
This is directly related to quality. The market for clean, dry polyethylene film is very strong. And even after the major market dip of that we had in 2013 and earlier, film has been pretty steady. If it's not clean, it is very difficult to market material. So it's directly related to the quality of material.
So clean and dry, and is there also a contaminant issue?
Yes, absolutely. So it really needs to be a polyethylene stream, so not including the multilaminate, oxidagradables, polypropylene, PVC. It really needs to be a polyethylene stream, so following the directive that the poster and the website expresses.
So you're saying there that it's not working because they're looking at the curbside option?
That's not clear from the question.
Yeah, that's why we would encourage return to retail.
Gotcha. And again, the contaminant issue.
And again, folks should feel free to contact us afterwards so we can, help with markets and other efforts.
Great. As we've all heard, the Evolving Ton has a lot of multi-layer laminate pouches and other packaging. I'm assuming that's outside the WRAP program, but do you want to talk about that at all?
One thing that's really important to note about the Evolving stream is that the growth in pouches is not because you have bathroom tissue overwrap or bread bags or the huge stream of material, highly recyclable material moving to pouches. It's more rigids and non-plastic moving to pouches. So it's really important to keep those two materials kind of separate in terms of thinking about the recyclability of these materials at this point. There are a lot of people interested in big companies looking at developing the recyclability and working with the reclaimers to have a pouch that may be recyclable. But right now, the huge volume of material isn't going to pouches that you have in your household that we should encourage residents to recycle.
And to add to that, there are a number of programs and activities underway at the ACC that are looking to recover that material. So we'd be happy, Christina, after the call to point you to some contacts that can give you more information about those programs.
I agree, but I like what Nina said. I think that the plastic wrap certainly isn't going away either.
Oh, no. No.
Just to circle back again one more time, I got a new one in here. How about boat wrap?
Not at this time, no.
Okay, great.
Saran wrap is one that has really moved towards more of a polyethylene. I just wanted to go back to that, and I'm realizing that's not explicit on our website. But a lot of the saran wrap now is a polyethylene, not the meat wrap, though.
Gotcha. Nina, can you talk a little bit more about the value? I think you mentioned 15 cents a pound, so we could do some math, 1 billion pounds times 15 cents, but there's a lot of question about the economics of what's been throwing out. I also remember Becky mentioning it was $64 million worth in the state of Wisconsin. Do you want to talk about that number a little bit more, or those numbers?
Yeah, the 64 million is all plastics, but of the highly recyclable material that's kind of being left in that Wisconsin waste stream, a huge bulk of it is the commercial polyethylene film, and that actually is higher than 15 cents a pound if collected in a way that keeps it clean and dry. So the pallet wrap can be much higher than 15, in the 20s, so and higher. So the value is certainly there given the quality. In terms of looking at that kind of nationally, I don't know how I'd give you a really good nugget to hold on to in terms of monetary. We know that the bulk of the material is recyclable in the stream right now, and the range of kept clean and dry can be probably in the mid-20s, 15 cents, and then lower if quality is not good.
Great. One other question, can a city still be a wrap champion if there is a curbside collection component?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. All right.
Only a few things that they have to do to be a wrap champion. So we have a list of just simple things to do when you sign up. It's a pretty basic entry level to be a RAP champion.
But you know, that's a great question. So would you outline the requirements of becoming a RAP champion?
I should have that at the top of my head, but basically it's checking that our directory is accurate for your area, posting information about how to recycle film and bags on websites, encouraging local retailers to adopt the signage. Help me out, Sherry. It's pretty basic stuff, just getting those general materials.
Sharing the materials, you know, as you said, making sure that the retail locations are updated in the directory, and that, you know, we encourage the promotion of the How to Recycle label as well. But it's the simple requirements of information sharing and updating and making sure that we're encouraging the retailers to adopt the poster.
And here in the city of Milwaukee, we've included information about plastic bag recycling in our newsletters that go out to our households. And we've also included a message about, you know, recycling plastic bags and film at the store during our some of the door-to-door outreach activities. So I remember when I signed up that it was just asking you to commit to, you know, like you said, one of those items was spreading the word to your residents. So we've done that through different channels.
Educating your peers about film recycling, pointing them to the resource tools, linking to our website with the resources on film recycling, as much information sharing as possible, and using up the communications tool, education tools for film recycling is primarily what we encourage of our champions.
And then getting back to the costs on that, I'm assuming the retailers pick up the cost for the signage in their stores?
No, there's no cost to them. They're downloadable posters.
But there is a spot to check on when you sign up as a RAP champion that we have there. You can request posters. It's not limitless, but we do ship out. Sherry ships posters and magnets to folks that are showing that they're really engaged and going to be using them effectively. So it's not available to everyone at limitless, but we do ship out posters and magnets.
And if you're planning to host an event or participate in an event where you could use that collateral to help educate folks, then we do like to make those available in those circumstances.
Right. And then the municipalities, if they choose to download them, will just pay the cost of printing themselves.
Yeah.
Yep.
Generally, yeah. I mean, for large volumes, we can certainly work out things. It just depends on the use and what they're looking to do. We like to be supportive in these efforts, so that's why we generally ask that you check in with us, and we can determine what it is you need, and we could try to work with you to make sure it's as economical as possible. Cost should not be a barrier to this.
Great. That's, I think, exactly the rationale right there. Thank you for pointing that out. Can we also just, Becky, I have a couple of requests for your website for Milwaukee, and Sherry, I also have requests for your website for the starter toolkit. So maybe we can just pull up that slide or those slides to put up while we're talking. I think folks are very engaged. I have some questions about California. Do you have any active RAP programs in California?
Actually, we're looking to pursue some opportunities to have a RAP program in California, working with Cal Recycler and the retailers. We have done outreach to both, and again are looking to work with them to hopefully work out some sort of arrangement or partnership to promote broader recycling of film beyond bags, leveraging their existing bag collection programs.
Great.
So we don't have any signed up at this point in ReTrack.
Can you just remind me when you started the RAP program?
RAP was started last year in 2014, officially.
So you're pretty new out there.
Yeah, because a lot of the work was done in 2013 with our partner state of Wisconsin, where we were developing the tools and the best practices. So on a pilot level, RAP really kind of started with them in 2013 as our pilot state for those activities. But officially, as a more national initiative, it began last year.
Great. It's amazing, Sherry. I still keep getting questions about what can and cannot go into the RAP.
Plastic film recycling
Selection. We have, how about residue on your cereal box liner? I'm assuming clean means not spanking clean, but pretty
You're
clean.
right. Yes, it doesn't have to be pristine. You know, we want it to be not much residue, but if there's some residue, a minimal amount of residue, that's okay.
Great.
I think when in doubt, people should not include it, just for the respective retailers not transporting foods. I generally say when in doubt, don't include it.
Exactly. We have another question about I was talking about pouches. We have some questions with some confusion as to mailing pouches versus. I was not talking about mailing pouches. I was talking about drinking pouches. But how about the mailers and that stream?
Yes, they are. Can you go to the poster? The shipping mailers, is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
They are polyethylene and they are recyclable. In fact, and the air pillow. In fact, one of the companies, Pack Worldwide, they have the How to Recycle label on their shipping pouches, as do for the shipping pouches that you get a lot of online products in. That also bears the How to Recycle label, and it's recyclable.
Great. We had a follow-up question about Tyvek.
Target.com, they have it, and a few other major retailers. I'm sorry, what was the question, Christy?
Tyvek?
Tyvek is okay as well. It's a polyethylene.
Yeah. Great. You guys just have a list. How about the little doohickeys from Ziploc bags?
It would be best if people take off the polypropylene. They're often polypropylene, a little zipper thing. It's best if people pull it off, and that's been a real challenge for us. That it's not ideal, but it's not a deal breaker. So,
gotcha.
I generally, yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you so much. So the other question I have is, obviously there are stores that are not part of the RAP program but still collect film and plastics. We were talking about the markets. So if I'm here in New England and I'm going to my local supermarket that's not part of RAP, I can still use your list as kind of a rule of thumb of what I can put into that bin.
Absolutely, yes.
Great. That makes it easier to have a national consistency. Let me think what else. We are running out of questions, believe it or not. So let's talk about Becky again in Milwaukee. We have a couple of questions, Becky, on signage and where actually you put signage in the stores, and did you specifically get signage at the checkout counters?
Sure. So the signage was affixed directly to the receptacles, the new receptacles that were delivered. And we had, at the checkouts, then we had the bag stuffers that were included with people's purchases. And we gave each store 4,000 of those bag stuffers. So that was the signage. That's what we were testing to see if it, to see what the effects of those materials were. And you can see a picture there of the RAP poster in the middle there that lists all the different materials that are accepted, and the do not recycle curbside message. One challenge was to make sure that whoever is maintaining the bin keeps that bin rotated such that people can see that poster and that the information on that poster. Also, like I said, increasing the impression. So people don't always read what's there. So, moving forward, it would be helpful to have that in more locations.
So, Becky, one question I failed to ask that just came in again was, did you see an uptick in what was collected? Do you have any data to share?
Sure. Well, the bail audit results are still forthcoming. So that's still being worked out, so I don't have that particular information right now.
Anecdotally?
Well, what we did was we interviewed customers in the different stores, and so I don't have any anecdotal information relating to the volume of what was collected, but in interviewing the customers, their awareness from our pre-surveys to our post-surveys did increase about the fact that more materials could be recycled beyond bags, and that you could recycle at the store, and also the amount of percentage of people who knew that you couldn't recycle curbside increased. So, but that other information, the bail audit information, is still to come.
Great. Can you talk a little bit more about any social media that you did, and then Sherry, can you tag on because you mentioned that you're working on that too?
Sure. Well, we did have our Facebook page. We had a post that I put up, and it also speaks to the challenge of communicating that clearly, because it did have a high number of impressions. I think at last I saw it, it was for us it's high. We had 500 people viewed that post. Normally it's 100 or less, and I know that the community groups saw it, and I definitely needed to be clear in phrasing that this is something we're promoting for people to go to stores and recycle at stores for their take-back, for their collection programs. Because actually had someone interacting with the post and wrote to me and ended up emailing me and had, this person had some confusion about that. So I reworded the post to make it definitely very clear. And then, so specifically for our social media efforts, that was a good experience.
In addition, our partners in Wisconsin also tweeted, and ACC tweeted about the campaign and encouraged folks to return their materials to retail. So we did encourage the partners involved to undertake some independent activities, in addition to what Becky and her team did to tweet out about taking the various film products back to the store for recycling.
Great. Sherry, I'm getting a lot of questions about how do folks get the bigger wraparound posters and some of the signage. So I think I'm just going to direct them again to you, to reach out to you personally.
Yeah, that's fine. That's
for
fine.
follow-up.
Yeah, sign up on Retrack.
Absolutely. Sign up. And you can get those resources. That's what they're there for. So become a champion.
There you go. That's even a better answer. If you want to pull that up again too and put that on the slide, that might help folks because we're getting quite a few of those questions. I have to say I'm a little embarrassed to say this, but I'm confused. Orange cereal box bag liners made out of wax paper.
Those that are made out of polyethylene film, and more of them are recyclable. And there's a distinction. There's the crinkly versus the soft.
Well, how it tears. So if it tears like paper, then
it's not polyethylene.
But most
so the rule of thumb is if it tears, keep it out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then again, I'm getting the same type of confusion, and I think you've answered this, but to reiterate, if a retailer is collecting their grocery bags, all this other material could go into that bin, even though the signage might just be specific to grocery bags.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we developed that poster, it wasn't me and Sherry developing. It was really a survey of major markets that we're sourcing that buy from all the major retailers. So while we don't have the buy-in from all the retailers to change all of their posters and their messaging at this point, the companies that are buying from them are okay with what we have on the website and on the poster.
Great, great. One more confusion, which seems to be the questions of the day now. How can a small rural municipality get a retailer not in their jurisdiction to become part of the WRAP program?
That's not in their jurisdiction?
Yeah. I'm assuming because they're rural.
Oh.
Well, I think if they're willing to ask the store manager, we could provide that poster to encourage them. It's likely that if they're a major retailer that they already do accept film and bags, but I would encourage them to reach out to us, and we can maybe work together on that, because it's likely that they're either already in our directory or we'd like to have them in our directory, so we could partner on that.
Okay. So again, reach out to Sherry. We had some conversation about that. We talked over each other when it came to cereal bags. So to reiterate, cereal bags versus wax paper versus polyethylene one more time, Nina.
So most are polyethylene, so general rule of thumb is it's okay to include cereal box liners. If there's doubt, don't include it, but the ones that tear more like paper are the ones that we don't want to include. If it stretches more like plastic, then you want to include it.
Great. I have another question. Were there any MRF partners in your pilot?
Yes, there are two. There's Outagamie County, and in Vancouver, Washington, the MRF there is also participating in the pilot.
So there was before and after sort done to look at how much film and the makeup of film and why, looking at was the film coming in because it's bagging other recyclables, is it bags of bags, is it single types of film, so that pre-sort was done in both locations.
Great. And we're still getting the question, even if folks are collecting bags nationally, you can put in all the other materials. It's more of a message of education than reality.
Absolutely. It's polyethylene and it's compatible. Yes.
So I have another one. If someone's already a wrap champion, can they get a new and updated toolkit?
Absolutely. We're not trying to discourage anyone from getting the resources and sharing them. Happy to provide it. Yes.
Thank you. One more question. Salad bags, pre-washed salad bags. I could do this all day.
I can see.
Yeah, this is a more difficult one, and that's what we've been working on with the newer language that we'll be updating on the website. But the crinklier kind, when you think of like the wrap that goes around a bouquet of flowers, that's generally polypropylene. So like a pre-washed bag of spinach is often more in that crinkly kind. But then there are the like romaine, organic romaine that's in more of that soft, like you can kind of push your finger through it, you can stretch it. That's a really difficult thing to convey on a poster, so we generally err on the side of caution. But the kind of rule of thumb is that if it's really much more crinkly, then that's what we don't want to include. So that's why we have generally steered away from the pre-washed salad bags.
Great. Yeah.
That's why that label is so important.
Yeah.
And the label, just to kind of drive home, there's two aspects of it. It's both, before you get the label, the material has to both have the access, more than 60% access, and that it's okay with reclaimers. That's a real work in progress, but that's a really critical piece to making a claim of recyclability. And that's why this label, I think, has a lot of wonderful potential.
And that was actually one of our questions, is how can you get the manufacturers to put those on the bags?
Yeah, hearing from consumers is a really powerful thing. And Sherry, you mentioned that there's sponsorship from FFRG for new adopters.
Yes. For the label, for those brand companies that want to use the label and it's currently not on their packaging, we do work with the SPC to provide some funding to help defray the cost of the licensing fees for the label, and sponsorships are still available. So you can also contact us and we can give you information in terms of how to apply for those resources.
Great. One thing we didn't touch on that I got a couple of questions on now that I'm going through to the end. What about adhesive labels on like a bread bag or any bag, really?
So this is kind of like the zipper on the Ziploc. It's not, no recycler really wants paper or adhesives, but all the major reclaimers have evolved over time to be able to handle it. So I personally always rip that stuff off. I always, if I somehow get a Ziploc bag, I always take the polypropylene stuff off. So if it's not part of the pure polyethylene piece, then I encourage people to take it off. but you don't have to go crazy with it. They can handle a little bit of paper and adhesive.
Great. So 2 questions to wrap up. One, Sherry, would you be so gracious to put up your contact information, which I think you just beat me to?
Just did it.
And the other question is there a quick rule of thumb to kind of go back to the calculations you did earlier, how much value is going into a landfill, or how much monetary value is being lost by, trashing this material?
Nationally?
They're talking about community-based is what the question was. Or nationally. He said both.
Those are independent state studies and local studies, aren't they, Nina?
Yeah, that's the problem. We don't know the total. You could look at the waste characterization for the EPA's national, and then apply, ranges of pricing. But to come up with that by state would be really difficult without all the waste characterization studies.
Right.
The reason we were able to do it in Wisconsin is because it was a more current waste study.
Right, and then just to clarify the Wisconsin number, the waste sort showed 14% film. Was that recoverable PE or all film?
It was all film, but most of it is pretty recoverable.
Okay. Well, I think we have our last question. We can just talk about, are there any resources or information regarding drop-off collections in public spaces not done through a retailer?
The directory includes non-retail as well, the drop-off directory on plasticfilmrecycling.org.
Okay. So you have all the bases covered.
But there are good examples. Orange County has some in Chapel Hill, North Carolina area. Dunn County is definitely another good example. I think Fort Collins. So.
Well, great. Sherry, we have a minute or so left. I want to give you the last word if you would like it.
Absolutely. I just want to, again, thank folks for the times and the great questions that you've provided us through this webinar series. It's educational for us as well. As I said, we're trying to be very responsive to your needs in terms of what you need in educational materials to increase recovery. So please, we encourage you to go to the website, plasticfilmrecycling.org. If you're on Twitter, please tweet us with any questions at recycle_plastic, and also my contact information is there. But become a RAP champion, please. The tools are there. We want you to use them, and through your works and good efforts, this is how we're going to help grow recovery of polyethylene film. So thank you.
Great, and we'll put one plug in for ReTrack as well.
Yes,
so
please sign up.
With that, I'd like to thank both Sherry and Becky, and you too, Nina, for joining us and taking your time to share ideas and information about RAP. But finally, we want to thank all the folks on the line for joining us for this month's SMM Web Academy, and hope you continue to join us. It's for you the program is designed for. Please complete your evaluation to give us our feedback on how we can further meet your needs. And note in the evaluation, you can also check the box if you would like to be contacted by the RAP folks for more information. So with that, I conclude today's webinar. Thank you so very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.